So today's podcast is with Jill Stewart, founder and president of China Rescue Dogs, and Ryan McDonnell, who is the vice president at China Rescue Dogs. China Rescue Dog is a 501c3 charity that was started back in early of 2019. So their mission statement says that China Rescue Dogs, their whole point is, their whole goal is to rescue and rehabilitate dogs from the dog meat trade in China and provide them with loving forever homes in the US and Canada. Working with trusted rescues and shelters in China, they first remove the dogs from imminent harm and danger, treat their physical and psychological injuries, and socialize the dogs so that they can be integrated into loving family environments. Then, in partnership with other rescues in the US and Canada, they locate adoptive families for the dogs and arrange transportation of the dogs from China to their new forever families. So that is a beautiful mission statement, and I'm so grateful to have both of you on the show. So welcome, Jill and Ryan.
Thank you.
Well, I am so glad you accepted my invitation, and I was telling Jill earlier that I discovered China Rescue Dogs when I saw a post on Facebook in 2020 where you were flying dogs from China. And because of the pandemic, it's been extremely challenging to fly dogs. And so we are so grateful for the work that you have done. You've, I think, rescued and flown over 100 dogs at this point. Is that correct?
We've actually rescued, since we started in 2019, between the pandemic, flight volunteers, and on freighters, over 375 dogs to date.
Oh, wow. Okay, well, you know, we will talk about how the foundation was created and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And but, you know, since the pandemic at the height, is that the first flights were in June, you told me? Is that?
That's correct.
Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so since the pandemic, you've been able to fly back how many dogs?
To date, we're almost at 250.
Wow, since the pandemic.
That's correct.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so I was so glad to discover your organization because you know, you're doing amazing work, and thank you so much. You know, God bless you, because we need people to get involved, and to, you know, these dogs, all they need is really love and nurturing and a safe place to call home. But before we get into all the details of the work that you're doing with China Rescue Dogs, I always like to have an idea of how, you know, each guest, a bit of their background, history. So if we could start with you, Jill, where were you born and raised, and did you always love animals from the get-go?
I did. I was born and raised in New York, and then moved to North Carolina. I've always loved animals. As I was a young child, I would have the kittens in my room or stop on the road and rescue a dog. I currently live on a horse farm in North Carolina and have 5 dogs. Actually, one is coming tonight, so that'll be 6, 4 from China.
Oh my God.
And I have 3 horses, all rescued from China. So I've always truly loved animals and helping animals within our country as well as internationally.
Well, that's great. And what about you, Ryan? What's your background?
I've always lived here in Ohio. Grew up in Canton, Ohio. Live in Medina, Ohio right now. And with animals, always loved animals. I have 6 golden retrievers at this point. One has been rescued from China. The other one has always been, are all rescues from local organizations.
Wow. I remember a video, and you did mention that you had a lot of golden retrievers.
I do. And every
so...
vacuum, we go through a vacuum about once a month here at the house.
There's no point in doing it more.
Exactly.
You gotta love the hair. And golden retrievers are such beautiful dogs. I mean, they're so docile, and so, you know, thank you so much for rescuing them. I'm curious, when did you both hear about the dog cat meat trade? Because I only heard about it recently. I heard about it in late 2017, I would say. Before that, I had no idea that this was happening. So when did you first hear, like Jill, about this dog cat meat trade?
I have actually known about it for quite some time. I think most of us know about Yulin. That's kind of in the Western world. We know about that dog meat festival, and I have certainly taken an interest in that. However, I really dove into learning much more about the dog meat trade. It's a little different in other Asian countries. I focused in on China specifically. There are not a lot of resources there because it's a communist country. It's much harder to get resources into that country and save animals. So my concentration has been heavily in China, but I was quite aware of it for quite a while. Yes.
And so is it fair to say that you first heard about it through the Yulin Dog Meat Festival?
That is correct. I mean, most of us are aware of the Yulin Dog Meat Festival and what occurs during that time frame. It's heavily broadcasted in the Western world and around our world, actually. However, as you start to really look at the industry, you'll realize that it sadly occurs every single day in China.
I mean, that was, like you, for me, it was Yulin Dog Meat Festival, and it was through, actually, I have a guilty pleasure. I watched the housewife shows, and it was Lisa Vanderpump, thanks to her, because she had... she actually did a lot of good for the cause because she really opened it up to a platform that these people would have never heard about it otherwise.
Yes.
And what about you, Ryan? When did you first hear about this dog-cat meat trade?
2019. I was, honestly, 2019.
Are you serious? Oh,
I'm
wow.
absolutely serious. I had lost a dog, a golden, and adopted through China Rescue Dogs. And doing research when I was waiting for my Murphy to get here, I started learning about the abuses, etc., in China, and that's when I got involved. And then I met Jill in 2019, and here we are.
Wow. I guess because you're both in North Carolina, you quickly connected and
Actually, funny story about that is that Jill's in North Carolina, I'm in Ohio, and I was a doctor.
I'm so sorry.
No worries. No worries.
My geography is not very good.
No worries. We talked a lot. We started working together. I was a doctor. I mean, I wasn't really involved, and then Jill kind of sucked me into it a little bit. And then I actually met Jill face to face first time. I think it was May, Jill, or June of 2020.
Oh, wow.
And so, well, we had talked on the phone. We have done all this work together, but we actually met in person.
Wow.
A year later.
When welcoming dogs from China, I guess?
Correct.
That's correct.
That's amazing. That's a great story.
I actually met her at the airport when her flight flew in.
That's amazing. And you're a doctor of like a general practitioner, or what kind of medicine?
I am not a doctor. That's a fact.
Oh, I heard that. I guess my ears were ringing.
Jill's a nurse. Okay, all right. I am not a doctor. That's a fact.
Okay, I thought I heard you say.
So, no, okay. I am a director of IT for a major 100 corporation.
Oh, okay. So a techie. We always need techies.
Yeah, I'm a geek. I'm 100% a geek.
Oh, yeah. I love it. My husband too. So. Okay. Yeah, it's always good to have them.
Yeah, we serve our purpose, maybe not much, but we serve our purpose.
Well, I would love to hear how, I guess, Jill, you started this China Rescue Dog Foundation in early 2019. So you knew about the dog meat trade for many years.
Yeah.
And what made you decide to start this foundation, and how did you go about doing it?
So I had lost a golden retriever in May of 2019, and I decided I really wanted to take an interest in China, and I started to look at dogs within China to adopt. Okay. And I went through the process myself. There was a golden retriever that was disabled, and no one wanted. He could not walk at that time. And I said, you know, he's really my dog. And I started the process, which has been extremely, extremely helpful for us running the rescue, because we can appreciate what it's like while people and families and rescues are waiting for their loved ones and their dogs. If Ryan and I hadn't gone through that, it would be very, very hard to understand the anticipation as they come from China to this country.
Yeah.
Once my dog,
I'm so sorry to interrupt, but especially during COVID. I mean, the waiting time was much longer.
Right. Okay. So once I adopted my golden retriever, I flew across the country and brought him home. I just started to really appreciate the desperation within China and the animals and learning a lot about it. I decided at that time, you know, I'm just going to bring a few animals in. And I started a GoFundMe page, and I brought about 6 or 7 more little guys in. And I thought, you know, I don't think I want to stop there. So I decided to start a nonprofit. And at that time, once I started the nonprofit, I just hit the ground running. There was a fairly large rescue operation. One of the dogs we call number 1, and I'll let Ryan tell you that story. We started rescuing about 20 dogs from the very beginning.
Oh, wow.
It was a process that I had no idea what I was doing. You know, it's a very, very tricky process. It's taken a long time to learn. And early on, I said, you know, I'm going to have to go to China, because to appreciate really what's happening, I need to go there. So early on, within the first month of starting the nonprofit, I actually went to China, and I was the flight volunteer for 8 dogs that came into JFK. And Ryan's group of animals went into Chicago, and that was our first actual flight volunteer into Chicago.
We are taking in dogs from halfway around the world, thanks to advocates who are raising money to save dogs from China. WRAL's Laura Leslie talking with one person behind all this efforts. Laura.
Ken, a Triangle woman is one of the founders of China Dog Rescue. It's a new nonprofit group that's raising money to rescue dogs from China and bring them to the U.S. She's adopted a very special ambassador to help tell their stories.
To say that Miso has come a long way is a serious understatement. He was left for dead on a muddy, snowy street in Shanghai. He survived distemper, which left him with neurological damage, but now he lives with Jill Stewart here in the Triangle.
Because the conditions in China are horrendous for animals.
China is notorious for its dog meat festival in Yulin, where about 15,000 dogs are brutalized and slaughtered every year. But even pet dogs elsewhere have no humane protection. There are no animal laws and few shelters. Many are abandoned on the street to be rounded up and sold to butchers or worse. That's why Stewart started China Dog Rescue to raise money for 11th Hour Rescue in Shanghai. The group flies 4 or 5 dogs out of China to the U.S. each month. Transportation costs about $800 per dog, and most, like Miso, also have health problems.
Yes, it's 1 dog at a time, but it is making a difference since we've started our nonprofit. People are reaching out. Airlines are helping us.
Thousands of dogs are euthanized in shelters here in North Carolina every year, and Stewart is used to people asking her why she's rescuing dogs from China. She sees it as a way to help raise international awareness of their horrific situation.
In China, no animal is safe or protected. And unless we advocate for that through the International Humane Society, rescue groups that are helping, these animals have no voice.
Now, Stewart says 11th Hour Rescue has about 32 dogs from China that are looking for homes. They took in another dozen dogs yesterday. A lot of them, like Miso, are golden retrievers, a popular breed in China.
Wow. And can I ask what organization you were working with? Because you said you flew dogs back in from China, but you weren't necessarily set up as a nonprofit yet.
Well, we actually were a nonprofit. So we started the nonprofit. At that point, once I brought my dog and a few little guys back, I decided, you know, I really just don't want to stop there. So I'm going to be a 501(c)(3). So I filed in the state of North Carolina, and I decided to start a nonprofit. That being said, understanding how to bring live animals internationally, especially from a country like China, is an extremely
daunting
That's
task. It's a daunting task.
It is a daunting task. It has many, many challenges, and I am very blessed to have people like Ryan and Sam and Bethany and Brian on our team, because there are challenges that people in our country do not appreciate or understand. While we work in our country, working internationally, we have to work on both sides of the world to get our family members here safely.
Yeah, absolutely. And so this was in May, I believe you said, in May of 2019, when you first decided to adopt a golden retriever.
I did. He, at the time, in his video, could not walk. He's sitting here with me now. He can actually run and play and walk. He was a distemper survivor, and he has neurological tics and has a lot of disabilities. But Ryan will tell you, he goes everywhere with me. He goes to the bank and goes to all time.
He's a survivor, a real survivor, a fighter. Oh, that's amazing.
He is.
Yeah.
We got photos.
It's funny.
I got photos today. He was at the bank with Jill. Just hanging out.
Oh
Exactly.
my God. Well, it's great that you have all these photos, because I love to incorporate these images into the podcast, and so everyone can get a nice glimpse at your babies. But I'm curious, like, how do you establish a connection in China? I mean, you just mentioned it's a very challenging environment to work in, especially for foreigners. Do you speak, Mandarin? I mean, how did you connect with the rescue shelters in China that had your dogs?
So, understanding the Chinese culture is very challenging in itself, and we operate on what is called a social media app, WeChat. capital CHAT.
Yeah.
What most people don't realize is that's really 100% of our formal communication. My last trip into China was December of 2019, so I haven't been over there for a year. Wow. I was supposed to actually fly out February 24th of last year, but because of the pandemic, I could not. And so now I'm really, when I would go there, I was able to meet the rescuers. I was able to go into the shelters. I think one thing that established the relationships early on with China Rescue Dogs was that I was willing to go.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't just willing to sit here in the United States. I actually got on a plane. I took my daughter. I went there. I looked at the shelters. I heard what they needed. I appreciated how hard it actually was to get the dogs out, the needs that the dogs had. We would bring suitcases of supplies. So I had 11 people that would fly back and forth for us. Wow. And we moved 100 dogs on passenger planes.
Wow.
Just alone.
Yeah.
And we would all take supplies, bordetella shots, heartworm, dog food, collars, anything in a big suitcase for the animals. So that in itself kind of created an energy amongst the Chinese rescuers that I was very committed, so much so that I was willing to come. I actually went every month. Wow. I flew back and forth every month, sometimes twice a month if needed. So, I got very used to that.
So they knew you were serious and that they could trust you and that you were helping them as well, you know.
Right.
So and I'm just curious, how do you communicate? Do you have like an app that translates, or?
So it's a very good question. And now what's ended up happening is the rescuers and myself, because I can't go there yet, I'm hoping to go in maybe a few months. I'm really subject to having a relationship on a social app, but they've become my best friends. Some of them speak English, some of them do not speak any English. So it really does make it even more challenging, because I'm having to figure out a way to communicate, and we're getting ready to move 145 dogs in the next several weeks, and then the balance is 60 at the end of the month, so over 200 are coming.
Oh my God. And communication is key, right? For these operations
Communication is key. We also have an agent who's Chinese, and I have to go through one of my rescuers. She helps us book the flights, and she's the one who really communicates directly with the customs in China. So everything is very, very complicated. And we have a wonderful rescuer that's kind of our point contact for all the paperwork and all the communication. I have individual relationships. China Rescue Dogs started around Shanghai. It was where I started and felt more comfortable. As we've grown and expanded over 2 years, we're now over all of mainland China. So we don't limit our rescues to one area because we're very comfortable maneuvering around. We're very established there. And one of the things that I think China Rescue Dogs does differently, so to speak, is that we don't say no to any dog. We are always having to raise funds. So we take the disabled dogs, we take the older dogs, we take the senior dogs, we take the dogs with missing 3 legs, 1 leg, in wheelchairs, blind. In fact, one of my rescuers showed me this morning, an old lab that's lived there 10 years, and we don't say no. That being said, we are always having to raise funds, and we're always having to do social media to promote our rescue, because this is not cheap. It's very expensive.
It's a fortune, actually,
Very expensive.
Especially since the pandemic. And can you speak about that? Like, Ryan, have you ever been to China with Jill, or?
No, I have not. I have not at this time. But it is, like you said, it's very, very expensive to move each animal.
I guess because some of the biggest costs at this point are the flights, as I understand.
Right.
And the reason for this is because of COVID, the flight restrictions, people are not traveling, so you can't use flight volunteers. I don't know if you ever used flight volunteers in the past, but that really helps cut costs, sometimes in half, as much as in half. And so at this point, you're having to pay cargo flights for these dogs, and I think it's something like $3,000-4,000 US per dog. Is that an approximate?
It depends. It fluctuates because, again, we're subject to what the market is and what the freight is. So as the passenger planes start to move a little bit, and the ocean freighters are actually moving on, that's helping the cost down on the cargo planes. We did have 11 people that flew back and forth for us. I will tell you, though, although it's expensive, I'm not so sure that this isn't the way to go in the future with cargo planes, because we are getting a substantial amount of animals out. It took us months to move 100, and we spent thousands and thousands. And I sat on a plane, and so did 11 other people. It's very hard to find flight volunteers. It's hard to coordinate. It's hard to get the visas. It's not as easy as people think it is to get somebody there. And then to have Westerners who've never traveled there, having a VPN and communication, they're leaving their family members, they're going into a communist country. It's quite challenging to find people. We're also subject to the airlines. So there were only 2 airlines, several. Air Canada was one, but just a few dogs. Eva Airways was usually the one we took, or Aeroflot. And those airlines would only allow us to take 5 to 7 dogs. We're bringing in, 60 to 50 dogs at a time.
Yes, I've noticed that. It's much more efficient. Yeah, and when you weigh all the pros and cons, it might actually be the better route to take, like you said. Oh, I see little cutie. Oh, I love you. Oh my God, that face. And what's her name? I saw Tessa.
This is Tessie. So she is rescued. She is actually from a meat truck. She's a meat truck survivor. She's missing her eye, and she has a lot of hard time seeing. So what she does is her little dog bed is right on my desk when I work. And because I work in China mostly, I think that my Chinese dogs are so used to WeChat that they don't even understand. They're like, oh, it's 2:30 in the morning. It's time to eat. We came from China. What the heck?
Yes.
No
she
different.
hasn't acclimated to North America's time zones.
No, because she's basically still on the 2:30 eating schedule.
She's a cutie. And I guess, Ryan, you don't have your dogs with you in your room, but you'll send me those pictures and we'll make sure that everyone gets to see them.
Absolutely. They're actually underneath the desk right
they're
now.
Sleeping? Are they?
They're sleeping. They're kind of hanging out.
They're taking a nap. They're
taking a nap. I work in here all the time, and they just kind of curl up around me. If I tried to move my office chair right now, I could not.
No, okay, they're comfortable. Be careful.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll try to remind you. You have little babies under your desk here. So we got a little glimpse of Tessie, and you have other dogs with you, I think, at home. You just mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that you're expecting another one tonight.
I am. She came in about a month ago. She's a chocolate lab that's blind, fully blind. Oh,
this is perfect. This is my dream podcast.
Oh my God.
They make it so amazing.
Yes, we have a visitor.
And she was Tessie, the dog that we're seeing in the video, was flown back in June of 2020 from China.
Yeah, she was actually on a freighter. She was the first group of dogs that we took, and there were 5 little ones. We were the first. China Rescue Dogs was the first one to pioneer the freighter. I can also move to the Golden, who is here as well.
Might as well.
We can introduce the Star. It's kind of dark. Let's see. Oh, can you see him or no?
Well, you'd have to turn your camera the other way, like your phone the other way.
Oh dear. That might not work. I'm so electronically challenged. I think I'll just come back up here.
It's fine. You just make sure I'll bug you for some pictures, and we'll make sure everyone at home gets to see him. And so the chocolate lab you're expecting, and he's already been flown, or is it a she? I think you said it's a she.
It is a she. She is blind. She is also a meat truck survivor. She is 5. And really had no hope. And again, was a breeding dog and then put on the slaughter truck. Wow. So we, China Rescue Dogs, has decided to adopt her, brought her here, and now she's coming to my house to get cataract surgery.
Wow. Okay, well, you're going to have a family of 3, is that correct? Well, I mean, you have horses and all sorts of...
4 from China. I have what's called a Chinese rule dog.
Oh my God.
She's a little black dog. I made up a nickname. It's a snippet because no one knows what in the world she is. She's like a greyhound, black schnauzer mix thing. Yeah.
And another meat truck survivor? Or?
She's a police pound survivor.
Oh.
And all the dogs that I have are actually from all over China. All different rescuers as well.
Wow. And so, like you said, you first started in Shanghai, but now like you're working with different rescues all over China. So
correct. Mm-hmm.
And how are they rescuing these dogs from meat trucks, for example? Is it like they intercept the truck and then, you know, the truck driver doesn't have the right permits, or they're able to seize the dogs, or any idea how that part of it works, or...
Yeah, so there's a lot of ways that we get dogs. Depending on where it is in China, there are locations in China where it's a little bit different. They're abandoned on the streets, they're in the police pounds, or they're in these what I call terrible shelters. You know, you're talking thousands of dogs, thousands. Far from any kind of shelter that we would ever have in this country, maybe two or three people working with 2,000 dogs. And so we pull from that shelter a good bit as well. We also know, you know, sometimes when dogs are taken to what they call the fairs, they're purchased and they're being weighed, and we will then purchase them, rescue them, and put them in quarantine. We have, our rescuers don't directly go to the slaughterhouses or the meat trucks. There are people that we work with and the rescuers work with that will purchase the dogs. There is certainly you know, you're right. If the dogs don't have the proper tags and licenses and things of that nature, you can actually stop the trucks. So there's many ways that people actually acquire rescue dogs in China.
Yeah. And Ryan, you are vice president, is it vice president of adoption or just vice president of all operations?
Vice president of pretty much
everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
We have already established you're the techie person in the nonprofit. And can you tell us a little bit more about your journey with China Rescue Dogs and the kind of work that you've been helping Jill with so far?
Sure. I helped develop the first website for China Rescue Dogs, and when we were very small, we're growing very quickly at this point. And then with China Rescue Dogs, I did adoption applications. I called adopters, or still do. Okay, yeah. And then transport, cleaning kennels, whatever needs to be done. Jill, myself, and Sam. It doesn't matter if it's technology, if it's fundraising, if it's cleaning a kennel, holding a dog, coordinating the resources when they come into the U.S. We all work together. So even though Jill's the CEO, president, founder, or whatever, she does the same thing. Sam does the same thing. I do the same thing.
You all roll up your sleeve and get, dirty.
All get dirty doing it, yeah. So, in fact, I think it was December 18th, Jill and I rented a van. She flew to my house, and she and I drove to New York City to bring dogs back, and then we drove back again the next day. And we actually met in my driveway with the rescuers. And
like, that's what you look like.
Like 3 o'clock in the morning. Okay,
oh my God.
They're doctors.
You had 16 dogs in your garage.
I had 16 dogs in my garage. And doing all the paperwork at 3 a.m. And yeah.
That's dedication. That is dedication.
Yeah.
And no signs of stopping or slowing down, anytime soon.
No.
Well, it's great because, I did mention at the beginning that in 2020 is when I really noticed your posts and I got familiar with your nonprofit. And to date, you said since the pandemic hit, and it's been so challenging. So many people had adopted a dog from a rescue group in China, and they were asked to wait and wait and wait. And I had a friend adopt a dog from China, and she was like biting her nails and was so anxious because she felt like, am I ever going to see my dog? Like there was no flights leaving China. But you still managed to fly 250 dogs since 2020 alone. So that is, miraculous in my book. And I guess you had established good connections with the rescue groups. You figured out, I guess, thanks to Ryan, a lot of the logistics with the transportation. I mean, can you tell us a little bit more about those challenges, Ryan, that you faced during the pandemic with transport?
Absolutely. I want to take a step back here for a second. Yeah. Is we have great relationships in China, and it's also about establishing relationships here in the United States where people trust us and they know we come through with our word.
Yeah.
Okay. The challenges with transportation, and I think a lot of rescues have this, is that we come into a certain port, and we were using Chicago for a little bit, but it was not the best for the animals. So we switched to New York City.
Right.
And that's where, and we have a great staff in New York City. When I say staff, they're all volunteers that come in. Bay Street Animal Clinic, Dr. Terry comes in, or Dr. Cab and her staff, volunteer their time. We check out all the dogs, and then getting them from New York City to the Midwest area is very, very challenging. So it's getting reliable transportation. We're actually looking at establishing a new process for that transportation. And I'm not going to go into the details of what we're looking at this point, but we just need to work on it a little bit.
Yeah.
But we have that's the hardest part for us. It's getting them out to the adopters if they cannot meet us in New York City.
It's actually not flying them from China. It's actually
it's actually here in the U.S.
Oh, wow.
It's very, very difficult in China to get them here to the U.S. because we're dealing with freighters right now, not passenger airlines. And if something happens with the freighter, we need to deal with it. I mean, just in time. Jill and I were in New York City last month. I had to look at the date.
Yeah, you're like, I don't know anymore.
Yeah, it feels like a lifetime ago. But it was really only a couple of weeks ago.
Okay.
But we were dealing with just-in-time issues, and we're able to pivot, make decisions, and go for the safety of the animals and the adopters, and just make it happen. Yeah. That's what's great about what we do. And that's what I think is so special about China Rescue Dogs, is that we can call people that we establish relationships with on the China side and the U.S. side. I think we made a phone call at 9 o'clock at night on a Friday night and said, hey, we need some help here. And they said, we're here. Yeah.
Okay, what do you want? What do you need?
What do you need? Exactly.
Yeah.
So transportation's hard, and that's why Jill and I got in a van and drove. And I can tell you what, we had a good time on the way out. Well, there was a snowstorm that came through the night before. We got delayed driving out there, and I'm a wimp driving. Jill can tell you that. But then...
Me too, by the way.
Okay.
I'm careful. I'm always cautious. And
exactly. She's like pedal to the metal.
Yeah, like, we gotta go. We gotta go.
We gotta go. On the way back, we'd been up. I don't know what time we got up. 5 o'clock in the morning, Eastern Standard Time. And, well, she was up before then. But I got up about 5 a.m. We had to get all the dogs, do all the paperwork, check them out with our vet partners, etc., make sure they were safe, and left New York City at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and drove. I mean, that's what we do every flight.
Oh, wow. So much work. And people don't realize, I mean, I'm learning as you speak because, I had an idea that it was a lot of work, but, now you're giving me the full picture.
And I think the best part about the whole thing is that everybody at China Rescue Dogs, we do this for free. There's no compensation.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no compensation. We may sell like a trinket on our website, a t-shirt, okay? And Jill dies every time I say, sold a t-shirt, okay? But
I'm gonna go buy one, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it'll be great. I'll look at your order and be good to go. No, but we have a fixed cost on that, okay, that we have to pay.
Yeah.
But every dollar that comes in, say from a t-shirt or a donation, goes toward the dogs.
Not
period.
to you, not in your pocket.
Not in our pocket. I think, I know that Jill's paid out of her pocket. I've paid out of my pocket. Sam's paid out of his pocket. I know our vet clinic has paid out of their own pocket. I know some of our volunteer transport drivers have paid out of their own pocket to do this. Even though sometimes, hey, look, we're going to have McDonald's tonight. We'll give you, we'll buy dinner tonight. We'll get you a burger and fries. But
go crazy.
People are going crazy. Yeah, you get the milk. You get the large Coke.
You want the
small
trio? Are you sure we can afford
exactly.
that?
Yeah, but everything we do, that's what makes it special.
That is
and it's
unique.
Just really,
I would say of all the nonprofits that I know, I think that's very unique to you. If maybe I'm mistaken, but I think most people, they need some kind of salary because this is their, they're dedicating all their time to this. But somehow you're making it work, you're superstars. You can manage many things.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
No, we manage a lot of things, and one of the things I look at when people want to donate to a rescue or look at what we're doing is what is the percentage that actually goes toward your mission?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's it.
Is it 5% of a dollar that is sent to you? Is it 20%? Is it 30%? And when I donate personally to for charitable organizations, I always look at that.
Okay.
And I think that's a lot of fear people have.
Yeah.
Is how much, if I give $1,
is it making a difference? Yeah.
Is it making a difference?
Yeah.
How much actually goes? Well, if you give $1, going to $1, it's 100%.
100%. That is, I've never heard of that. So that's beautiful. I hope you can continue, and I hope, you know, like we all support you, because, I mean, this is like, you know, heartfelt, you know, work, you know, that you're doing. You're dedicating all your time and energy into this. Tessie's having a little tussle.
She had her little ear.
She's like, yes, donate, please. So we can save more dogs like me. So adoptions, if we can spend a little bit of time on that, because we just went through some of the logistics and the hard work you're doing trying to get these dogs to their families. But I'm curious, how do you go about ensuring that the families that are, well, first of all, we'll start from the start. If somebody at home is interested in adopting from you China Rescue Dogs, do they fill out an application online? Or what's the first step that they would do?
So, you know, the first step that we do is on the China side, is where I work, is we start to get the dogs out of the injurious environments. And one thing that China Rescue Dogs cannot do is take behavior dogs. Dogs that are aggressive or dogs that are not friendly with other animals. Right. It really is just too challenging. Most of our families have small children or other pets, so they are looking to adopt. Bottom line is a family pet, whether it's large or small or purebred or not. We do we do a lot of due diligence on the China side before the dogs ever see an adoptive family or a rescue. We make sure that those animals are quarantined, have proper vaccinations, spayed, neutered, microchipped, and compliant with everything on the China side and everything on the United States side with the CDC and APHIS and our import permits. Once we know that our dogs are ready to fly, we have an application process that is where somebody actually has to fill out an application. There are reference checks, there are veterinary checks. We talk to the families. We make sure that all the families are appropriate for the match. Yeah. And usually when we call, Ryan and myself are the ones who call, I ask them their story. You know, why do you want to adopt a dog?
That's right. The motivation, the motivation.
Yeah, just tell me a little bit about your family. Tell me about how this animal is going to fit into your home. And often we get families that want to just adopt a dog from China. They love the mission and they love the cause. Yeah. So what Ryan and I do is we listen to their story and then we find a dog that's appropriate. So oftentimes, you know, I might have someone who's not that active who wants a border collie. I'm like, oh, I have the perfect senior lab for you.
Oh, wow.
So we do a very good match. And our adoption rate is about 99%. Early on, we did take 2 animals that had some behavior issues, but most of our animals, again, families take them into their homes or rescues. We do a lot of work with rescues. Probably 60% of our work is with rescue partnerships. Yes. And the other 40% is actually with private adoptions. And rescues are just as dependent on getting the dogs that are going to be appropriate. Again, most of their foster homes are multiple dogs, so they cannot have a behavior dog. Okay. And within each state, it's very challenging. So China Rescue Dogs does an exceptional job with working with each state and each state's compliance. Because as Ryan said, we're not exclusive to one state. We're across the country. Right. So we also have to be very careful when we cross state lines to have the appropriate health certificates to inform the inform the adopter that they need to make sure that they're compliant with their state regulations. Wow. And so we really do a good job on our side educating the family about a quarantine process, about a wellness check. It's not just an adoption application that China Rescue does. We do an actual, here's what you need to do, and we are there through the whole process. Wow. Right now we have flights coming in, and we have a lot of anxious families. So I have spent a lot of time on the phone.
Yes, I imagine.
And reassuring my families, because until we have our flight booked, and I've, Chinese New Year is just ending, but we have to wait until the airline opens. Yeah. And as Ryan has told you, we understand the cargo world, but it's hard to explain to someone who doesn't. So when a freighter said they are waiting for their family member, and this has happened to us before, there's not enough freight that goes on the plane, we get delayed a few days, then Ryan and I and Sam are making these calls. Ryan and I usually do rock, paper, scissors. I always lose, by the way.
Well, you keep everyone updated.
Rescues, and I get to call the ones that are not going to be.
I get the fun ones.
He does.
Because you're the better man, right? It's a tougher job.
So,
rock, paper, scissors. He loses.
Yeah. So, I think where it's special too is that Jill and I have gone through this process, getting our dogs, and we can empathize. And it's Jill said it before. It's really hard waiting for your family member to come and not knowing things. Wow. And a lot of times we're working in just in time information.
Yes.
And we're dialing as soon as we know it and triaging.
Wow. And, you got a lot of phone calls to make every day, I imagine.
Oh, exactly.
Well,
calls, text messages.
Yeah. And then it's also the custom side. So, if there's a shift and a change, you have all your United States paperwork that says the flight and the information is coming in on this time. So I'm on the custom side when the pups come in. So it's very, it's extremely hard. Yeah.
And you have to be ahead of everything. You have to plan everything out and really be organized, I can imagine. But I guess my question was more in the practical sense, like, do you promote the dogs that you rescue on your website, or is it more the case that if you're interested in adopting a dog from China with you, someone would just submit an application saying, hey, I'm interested in adopting a dog, and then you contact them, and then you talk about the family situation, and then you kind of curate that information into suggesting a certain dog that you think would be a good match. So it's not like someone can go on your website and go, I want that dog.
Well, we do feature dogs. Okay. Kind of our strategic plan, so to speak, is, if you put up a dog that everybody wants, then we have some kiddos that are special. Yeah. And those don't get the focus that I'd like at China Rescue Dogs for those dogs to get. So you're going to see some of our dogs that we would like to feature that really do deserve the special attention, as opposed to the other ones that we have, 25 people right now on a wait list for a golden retriever.
Right. I'm going to show you how easy it is to find your new forever family member from China Rescue Dogs. So you go to their website, chinarescuedogs.org, and then you click on adopt. The adoption page will load, and here you'll see that you can look by filter. You can look by breed, age, gender, size, or you can leave all filters off and just look at all these beautiful faces. All these beautiful dogs were rescued from China, from the meat trade. Any stray found in China will end up in the meat trade, so it's you're saving a life, clearly. And large breed dogs are illegal in urban cities, so we all know they get called and killed. So this is like changing lives. And you can have more details if you're curious, like this little guy. I'm super curious about him. He looks like such a cutie. So you load his details page and you can read about his story. So this is Mawa. He's a super sweet border collie cattle dog mix. He is 3 years old. He was saved by brave activists from China's dog meat trade. Despite his rough beginnings, he is now ready for his forever family. Please consider adopting Mawa today. You can also adopt or choose to apply for foster. If you have more questions, you have a lot of the details here, but if you have more questions, you can always email Brandy, who's their adoption coordinator, and get more details. But this is so easy, so simple. You can change a life. China Rescue Dogs, go there today and help. Adopt, foster, donate, share. No matter how small of an action, it all, makes a difference.
I have about 30 people for French Bulldogs.
Oh, wow.
So some of the bigger dogs or the mixed breed dogs or the disabled dogs, we will feature those dogs on our website. We, at this point, because we have been established, we have about 75 applications a month. And it's a daunting task.
But that's a good sign. That means you're doing something right, because you need those families, right? Like
exactly.
Yeah, you need them. So
and I and Ryan have been so blessed, because when we talk to these families, we get to hear their stories, and oftentimes they have either lost a dog or they have come across us and they really want to commit to taking this dog on.
Yeah.
And the details of the adoption for them, the process for them is fairly simple with the application, but the anticipation is very challenging. I talked to a family yesterday in Florida that's getting our beautiful husky. And she said, I know I've called you every day.
Oh,
but
my
do
God.
you have any?
She needs that reassurance, I guess.
This is one of 30. And I said, well, and I say that, I said we're optimistic that we're going to have our flights committed and we should know something. But it's, again, what China Rescue Dogs, Ryan and Sam and I do is we reassure the families.
Yeah.
So I will digress for a moment and tell you, when my golden retriever came in, he came into San Francisco with a Chinese flight volunteer. I think I hugged her so much she was about to call security.
It's like, what is going on here? Too much affection.
Like, I can't believe you brought my dog. She didn't speak any English.
Yes.
And she was like, you crazy American woman. You are insane.
You are insane.
And so, like Ryan said, I mean, for us, we really have been down that road. So when I understand and
appreciate,
you
know what to say, and what not to say sometimes is.
Well, it's helping the family and reassuring the family to make sure that they have the information. And when we don't have the information, because everything in China, the other thing that is so hard in China is that everything in China changes. It's like
all the time, eh?
Well, yes.
Yes.
And you have to have you have to have a certain personality to work within that situation, because we in our country on the western side of the world, we have an avenue to go to if things are wrong.
Yeah.
Well, when they say no, they don't mean we'll get back to you, we'll think about it.
No.
You can go to your government.
It's no. No means no.
You just have to wait. And the waiting is very hard. What we do, though, is we try to focus then on fundraising, putting together a plan for our next animals to come out of China. And we put our energy in a positive direction when things have been challenging in China.
Yeah. Before you left off, I was asking Ryan about the cost of adoption, because I read on your website or in an article, I don't remember, that you charge only for the flight, or the adoption fee represents the cost of the flight, but nothing else. And I mean, we all know there's so much more involved in terms of costs, the vet bills and all that stuff. Can you give us an idea, like notwithstanding the pandemic, because the pandemic is a unique situation, I'm sure the cost increased, but in normal times, what is an average, adoption fee? Does it go per the size of the dog or that sort of situation?
Yeah, so it varies. And the one thing that we do is we send $3,000 a month to feed the dogs in one of our shelters alone. So we are, again, we not only do we help the animals get to this country, but we also know at China Rescue Dogs that there are animals that are still in the shelters and that we need to provide. So one of our main rescuers, we do provide, she and her husband have been paying that out of their salary. So we have taken that ownership on. Once a month we send her all the food.
Wow.
And it's about, it really is about $2,500 to $3,000 a month that we send.
Wow.
That being said, there are certain dogs that we provide scholarships for. Two specifically I can tell you about. One is a poodle in a wheelchair, and then the other one was an old poodle that just flew in that is very, very challenging to get those type of adoption fees. And we also have families that are on fixed incomes. I have 2 dogs coming in on March that are senior citizens. They're amazing families.
Wow.
So we will provide scholarships to those families as well. We have a big mixed breed dog. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Extremely challenging, again, to get those adoption fees.
Okay.
So the small little doggies, the adoption fees are, around $750 to $900. The cargo rate for us right now is $1,200 to $1,500. So every flight, our rescue's putting in between $20,000 and $30,000 as a loss. Every flight. The big dogs are close to $2,500. And again, there are some big dogs that we take out that we might only get $700 or $800 for.
So you need to fundraise constantly, like you're saying.
Every day.
Who's the better one between the two of you with the numbers? Like who's got their, the oversight on the numbers? Because at one point, like I would be scared, like can't continue this work without, with those monthly losses.
I think it's a yin and yang kind of thing.
I like that. Can you elaborate?
Sure. I'm more practical. I'm going to say practical. Okay. It's saying we're going to do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And Jill's like, no, we're going to do this. Let's go this avenue.
And you meet somewhere in the middle.
We meet in the middle.
Yeah.
And then Jill comes up with these ideas. I'm like, how did you think of this? And then Sam, myself, and Jill got on a phone call, and somehow she convinces us that this is a good idea. And then we just run with it, and it's always panned out. Okay? I've had ideas that have panned out. Okay? Sam has ideas that have panned out, but Jill really can think outside the box.
She's like the mastermind behind it all.
She's a mastermind. And so you have the yin and yang that are working together, and we somehow blend together.
Wow.
And, when she's upset about something, I try to calm her down. And when I get she's seen me flustered like there's no tomorrow. And she calms me down.
Somehow.
Somehow. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I guess in terms of fundraising, what do you guys do? Like, do you have events? You were talking about events earlier, and you are now well known. I'm imagining like your exposure has increased quite a bit. The website. How do you amass enough funds to do this work? I guess is my question. Like,
media.
Media? Okay.
Media.
Well,
media,
I know you're right.
Like this here, like your podcast, YouTube, their print media. Well, print media, people.com/pets. They've run us 3 times so far.
Okay, yes. And Ricky Gervais retweeted
Oh,
it.
yeah.
That was a huge help, yeah.
It was huge help. That's how we get our funding. And, you know, keeping Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, showing what we do and asking people to donate that.
Yeah, to help support.
To help out.
Yeah.
To help support.
Well,
I mean, Jill, do you have anything to add to that? I mean, I think that's where...
I do. We have, what's really neat about a rescue is when we started, we have people who adopted our dogs from the very beginning, and they have continued to support us. And there is a population that really doesn't go on social media, kind of an older population. They're the people that Ryan was one of them, used to be, that I would call when I would want to take a dog out that needed a lot of care and special help.
Wow.
So we do have a subpopulation of about 10 people that we can call if we get into a jam.
They will be there to bail you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
They will. And we have what's called crate sponsorships, which is a wonderful thing where they can actually, I have a gentleman who really has a flip phone, and he just likes me to tell him when the flights are coming. I talked to him today, and I showed him a dog that we are bringing with a foster home, but no funding attached. Another example is we have a golden retriever coming in with cancer, and we do have a rescue that stepped up. Again, that's a $2,500 ding on China Rescue Dogs. But again, we're not going to tell that dog it can't come. It has a wonderful hospice home. That in itself is $5,000 right there that we will be having to fundraise or get crate sponsorships or people to step up and help us. And those are just 2 examples on this flight.
And have you managed to get like corporate sponsorships or like a company backing you up or giving you some funding? Because I work, for example, for a large financial institution. I got them to donate quite a bit for my local SPCA for a big fundraiser event that they were having. I imagine that could help, and I guess all that media exposure can help garner those kind of sponsorships, but not so far.
We do have some corporate sponsorships. Again, things have changed a lot though when you have families that are struggling and companies that are not doing as well. A lot of us, unfortunately, were counting on the fundraisers. We had our fundraiser was in March and it was completely sold out at 250 people. And like other nonprofits, ours got canceled. So I think you're going to start to see a lot of success with when the country opens, that corporations are going to do corporate sponsors and corporate matches. But it's going to take a little bit of time for our country to get back and people to feel financially a little bit better on solid ground as opposed to just trying to figure out if they're going to keep their job.
And so I'm curious because I had another nonprofit on my show recently, and they explained to me, actually 2 of them, they mentioned that what really helps them is a monthly donation, even if it's smaller, because it's really hard for them to budget anything, not knowing where the next dollar is coming from, So sometimes, like myself, I'll see a campaign, I'll give to that campaign, but it's a lump sum, It's a one-time. Oh my God.
So this is the snippet.
Snippet! We finally get to meet Snippet.
This is the Chinese rule dog.
Oh, he's such a cutie. I'm trying to, because his face is a little fuzzy because of the camera. It's, oh, yes, I see his little nut muzzle. Oh, so cute. and when did you get Snippet again?
Well, her breed is actually unknown. She's had probably 4 Chinese daddies, but She is actually, I named her a Snippet. So early last 2019 in September,
Oh,
I'm in
now
a
we see her
shelter,
perfectly. Oh, she's so beautiful.
and my daughter is carrying around. And I said, I mean, there's like 400 dogs, and I'm going through the dogs, and we're making our list. And I said, no, she's not on the list. And she said, oh, I put her on, Mommy. I said, no, the plane is full. You cannot add another one. She said, well, I did. I told them that we're taking her. So they named her Jill, actually, based on her import permit.
Oh
Her
my
name's Millie, and my daughter. So I've had her about a year and a half. But yeah, I was actually her flight volunteer.
God.
Um,
It's
so,
like, really, you did this last minute without telling me? But
oh no, she
it
just
all came together. And
um,
what a
yep.
cutie.
This is what's called a Chinese rule dog.
Oh,
She's got very long legs.
I think there is a resemblance, like you said, a greyhound, a little bit of a greyhound in the face, a little bit of elongated. Well, she's such a
You
cutie.
haven't even seen the body yet. It's very strange.
No, she's very lanky, I guess, long limbs.
Um, Very long limbs, and there's seems to be an elevated rear end with a chow tail.
Hey, it's all good. It's all good. Well, welcome to the show, Snippet. I'm really so glad you could stop by. She's a cutie. Oh my God. So, we touched upon the pandemic, the challenges that you've faced during this time, but I would also mention, I would love to get your thoughts on some of the the positive changes that came out of the COVID-19 global pandemic, and that is obviously China's Ministry of Agriculture coming out in April of 2020 with a new white catalog of livestock after COVID. And so they also made a statement saying that dogs were now considered companion animals and were not to be exploited for their meat or fur. So they were essentially branding dogs as pets and no longer, like they were never on the livestock catalog, as I understand, but still for the Ministry of China to make a statement like that, it's pretty big, it's pretty meaningful. They did not need to do that. And so I've spoken to people since that announcement, and I would love to get your point of view on that. Like, do you feel it's a very positive thing, and will it make a difference in terms of the dog meat trade in China? Will it hinder it a little bit, or do you see it developing into something like a nationwide ban on dog cat meat trade? Either one of you can start, Jill or Ryan.
That's a tough one for me because, I'm not sure if I see that much change. Unfortunately, I think sometimes things are said for a public impression as opposed to what is actually happening. What I do see is that there's education, that people are beginning to, in our world, ask, why is this meat trade continuing? So I do think that the pandemic has brought eyes on what has occurred for quite some time. Misconceptions about that they don't have enough food source, which is just not correct. Misconceptions again that Yulin is the only time that this occurs, which is absolutely not correct. Misconceptions again that there are not meat restaurants, which is not also correct. And so I would like to see at some point animals having rights over there and some sort of legislation passed where animals have, if brutality is occurring, there is a way that this culture can start to see that is just against humanitarian.
Yeah.
It's really brutality. It's cruel acts, unnecessary, and I do think that the pandemic has helped bring this barbaric, horrible meat trade, not just in China, but in the Asian countries, to alight.
Yeah.
I really feel like it has its purpose. You know, out of everything bad, something good comes from it. And that's a little bit, I'm hoping that the younger population continues to educate an older culture, which is what historically where I see these things happening in an older outskirts area. But again, it takes time to make change.
Absolutely.
And our world to stand up, you know, our country to say, we're going to take a stand in this. I mean, a no tolerance policy.
So I'm imagining you're a fan of HR 6720 that was passed in 2018. And that for, I think my viewers have heard about this, but, you know, just to reiterate, it's basically a ban on dog cat meat in the United States. And there's also House Resolution 401, I believe, that was more like a statement, you know, urging all nations to ban the dog cat meat trade. And that's just not telling other nations what to do, but it's saying that this is our stance. You know, this is, for us, it's not acceptable and should be abolished. I wish my country, I live in Canada, and we've been having a petition going around to try to do the same, you know, pass the same law. But I guess it keeps hitting a bit of a brick wall because, you know, a lot of the legislators are like, well, we have a lot more important, you know, things to tackle, and this is not a problem here in Canada. So I guess in my mind, I felt like it's a no-brainer, like just do it. You know? But I guess it's a lot more work than that, and we got to be a little bit more patient. But I do believe that, like you said, in China, it's more of like the older generation, would you say, that consumes dog meat on a more regular basis, and that are keeping that tradition alive, if you will?
I think you have two problems, actually. I think you have the meat trade industry, and you have no outlet like the SPCAs or the Humane Society or spay-and-neuter clinics or vet care. So you have multiple issues. So although they're on the meat trucks, in my opinion, I struggle with dogs living in horrific conditions with skin diseases, no food, no shelter, and there's, you know, 1,000 dogs. I'm not sure that that is a better life. No. So there are multiple problems. You know, you have these communist shelters run by 2 or 3 people managing thousands of dogs, and really no way to spay and neuter the dogs. Dogs that should be euthanized humanely don't get euthanized. Yeah. So you have really a lot of work that I believe that the International Humane Society and large organizations need to try to work with the communist government to help really start to sterilize some of these animals.
But I believe they have, you know, established some programs, and I know I spoke to Dr. Peter J. Lee, who you're probably familiar with, and he was to say that, you know, he obviously before the pandemic he would go to China very, very often, and they have conferences where they educate the, you know, people on, you know, what laws are existing laws in China that can help you rescue dogs and animals, and also education in terms of what you were saying, spaying and neutering, the importance of animal welfare, because this is all new to them. I mean, they don't have a history of sharing their households with pets, and actually it's only been legal in the last 12 years to have a pet in China. So there's a long road ahead, of course, but you know, I think like Animals Asia have a program also to educate, where they take dogs in schools and try to teach children the benefit of animals, and, you know, that it's nothing to be afraid of and that sort of thing. So these programs are starting to build momentum, and I'm sure they're making some impact. But like you mentioned, there's no animal welfare laws. There's no animal protection laws in China. And so that's why we see, you know, horrific abuse. And, people throwing at the height of the pandemic when it was thought that, you know, dogs and cats could spread the virus, and people would throw their pets out of the apartment towers, like high rises. And it's the kind of thing that we're here going, how is this possible? But it's a complete different mindset over there. Like a pet is often seen as a property, a little toy. They you know, they're little dogs that are legal in urban cities. And how about you, Ryan? How did you react to China's Ministry of Agriculture coming out with that statement? And do you feel it's going to propel change? Because I will mention also that, you know, the city of Shenzhen and Zhuhai, and then later on in September, I believe, of 2020, Leishi also put a ban on dog-cat meat consumption and the trade itself. So those were huge victories. They're big cities, and so we're hoping it's going to have a trickle-down effect, a domino effect, and other cities will be moved to make the same changes. What was your reaction when you first heard it?
I thought it was great that something was being done. Okay. Yeah. But as Jill said before, it's about education and keeping the education going. And, you know, if we have spay and neuter clinics that go over there, we have veterinarians without borders that are allowed in, and having proper care taking place, and making sure there's a change that actually does take place. Will it take time? Absolutely. Will it be overnight? No. But it's a step in the right direction. That takes people like ourselves to educate people about it, and then keep that momentum going.
Absolutely. I mean, no major change like that is going to happen overnight, like you mentioned. And I often am curious, of all the countries that have a prevalent dog-cat meat trade, because China certainly has a cat meat trade. Some countries, cat meat is less popular, like South Korea. It's more dog meat in that country, and it's systematic farming and breeding of dogs. Whereas in China, it's more strays and stolen pets, or pets that are sold into the trade. Would you agree with that? Yeah.
So you have a lot of breeding. And
you do? In China?
Yeah, you have. Oh, yeah. You have. That's why you see a lot of purebreds. So you have a lot of breed farms, and when they're done with them, the excess litters end up on the slaughter trucks. I think one thing that makes it extremely challenging is that rescuers, and including us, one of the challenges that not only China Rescue Dogs has, but people who work within this international community, is the fine line that we always balance, including this podcast, of what is said and what is not said. And, you know, with a government that controls everything and watches everything, you are always subject to them saying no. And one of the challenges that we have been facing is rescue dogs. You know, we do rescue the dogs. This is a sensitivity conversation with the Chinese, and how do we get the word out about the meat trade industry without being so offensive that they shut us down? So that has been probably, in my opinion, one of the biggest challenges that our rescue has had, to raise funds and to tell the story, but yet keep the dogs coming into this country.
Yeah, it's a fine line you have to walk, and it's almost like walking on eggshells, I imagine. You know, you have to be very careful and weigh each word carefully. But, you know, certainly I think you're supporting all these local rescues, and it's important for people to know that it's all good Samaritans, right, that set up these shelters. There's no government funding whatsoever. And, you know, they don't have the means. Like you said, the resources are just not there. So they absolutely need foreign intervention, in my opinion.
I mean, if you know,
they need foreign
funds.
Rescuers,
they do, and they need foreigner support. And they need to know that we are going to support them. So when things were challenging, we here in the United States can raise the funds to, send, I can't get supplies in there, but we can raise the funds to send the money over there so they can get the supplies for the animals. And we also work with sometimes our vet who tries to translate and communicate medications for our dogs that are in China. It's always, it's a very, very hard country to travel to and to work within. It does feel like home to me. A part of it is very sad that I haven't been able to go back there, and I'm really looking forward to traveling there because you'll find that amongst the meat trade industry, there's always these what I call angels. I mean, we are, yes, in the United States, we run this rescue and we bring the dogs, but they're not really. The angels are the ones who are in China, who are taking care of these dogs every single day, who are feeding them and, asking us to help and doing the hard work. I mean, we are doing the work as well, but nothing like the work that's done in China.
Yeah, it's a massive, colossal.
It's a village. It's really an international village that takes both sides of the world to have empathy and compassion on how each side works. And it's a beautiful marriage in the sense that when you find relationships such as we found in this country and in China that can get a large amount of animals together. And one of the things that we've seen in the pandemic especially is that our animals have brought joy to these people. That most of these people have lost their jobs or they're home with their families, their children have not been in school. Some of these, New York just opened their restaurants. And so these dogs have come in and they've given these families hope and joy. It's something for them to look forward to. It's something for their family to actually have in their house when all these hard things have been going on.
It's hope, it's like a symbol of hope, each dog. And I guess I know that I had a little bit of questions on volunteering because you accept volunteer applications, or do you have an established team of volunteers and you'd rather just work with the people that you've come to know and trust, or do you accept applications for volunteering?
Oh, is Ryan?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Are we putting you to sleep, Ryan?
No, I was getting off mute there. I hit the mouse and it didn't work, and I'm like, oh, okay. No,
we're like, Ryan.
Anyways, so yeah, we do accept applications for volunteers, and we have for grant writing, fundraising, transportation, following up with the adopters, etc. And when you can go to our website at ChinaRescueDogs.org and fill that out, and Jill and myself will give you a call. And one of the things is that I don't think people realize this is it's 3 of us that are doing this. It may take a little bit of time for us to get back.
Hello.
We'll actually give you a call back.
Okay, and could someone like me, like from Canada, do you accept volunteers from Canada, or like, because a lot of the work, I suppose, it can be done over the phone, over the computer. I guess it's worth sending an application and seeing where it goes.
Absolutely.
And be patient, folks, because these 3 people are working around the clock.
Yes, we are.
Okay.
And we're, the other thing is that one thing that we do is that when our dogs come in, somebody from our rescue is always present when the flight is there.
Say yes, you can apply.
Absolutely. I mean, anybody can make a call, follow up with the doctors. Doesn't matter if you're in the U.S. or in Canada, and send emails.
Yes.
Yeah, we absolutely entertain anybody who wants to help out.
And are there certain skill sets that you're looking after? Like if somebody is really good, well, you seem to be very having the website under control, but is there like someone that you're looking for where it'd be great to have someone that's really good at, social media marketing or that sort of thing?
Right now, I would say adoption applications and getting to know the story, and communications maybe with some of our adopters the day of. And Jill, feel free to disagree with me. But when Jill and I are at the rescues, or Jill's there, or I'm there, or Sam's there, that day gets very, very busy. And we're getting texted, we're getting Facebook messages, the phone's ringing off the hook, and we have 60 dogs that we're coordinating.
Okay, so you just need like anyone that can help and help with those communications, make sure that everyone's aware of where you're at, keep up with the updates, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Well, we'll see. And I was wondering what, because I'm in Canada, I'm a little bit curious. Can you name the shelter groups or the rescue groups that you work with in Canada?
We haven't been working with anybody in Canada. I actually have several dogs that are placed in Canada, but we're not.
Oh, you directly deal with the families.
We directly deal with the families. I've got actually one of our first dogs is a golden retriever that has no hind legs. He is in Canada. He's in a wheelchair. And we had a flight volunteer fly from Shanghai 55 hours to take him to his home in Canada.
Oh, my Lord.
In 2019.
And what part of Canada?
55 hours. I want to say Vancouver.
Oh, yeah. Okay. And that's one of my questions, because I've been seeing these videos, dogs being flown, and I'm like, how long are they in that crate? They're in that crate for hours, you know, like...
Well, so we're working with an airline, Air China, that does a direct flight, which is great. They fly directly from Beijing into JFK and Beijing into LAX.
And how many
which is
hours?
About 13 hours. That's about 13 hours,
yeah.
which is actually the same that I would do.
Okay.
So my dogs would be flying in cargo. So, you know, anything that comes internationally from China is still in cargo. You know, it's not in a cabin, but it's obviously in a temperature controlled area. It's also controlled by IPATA, which is the international animal organization that makes sure that you're compliant with all the regulations.
Okay.
We have a wonderful agent in China that does not, you know, we go to Beijing at last minute. Same protocol that we would have if we were exporting animals from our country into an international country. They have to be at the airport a certain amount of time before they can fly out. All of our animals have several water bottles on their crates. And when they come here, like Ryan said, we have our vet partners, Bay Street Animal Hospital in Staten Island. Our vets or our techs are here at every port, checking and making sure that any dog that needs fluids or just food or is a little bit cramped, we have that. We have a vet station, which is I don't think that there's any other rescue that's doing that. We've kind of taken another step further and made sure that our due diligence on the United States is done as well.
But I imagine the first thing a dog like that would have want to do is go for a walk and go pee-pee. Like personally, I'd be like dying. I'm like, get me out of here. But I think dogs can go without, you know, can contain it, keep it in for longer than most of us, right? All right, so I would just like to end with a couple of questions. In terms of, because a lot of the people that care about this cause are actually here in North America, a lot of foreigners, some people in the UK, Europe. A lot of people that support the cause are foreigners, and we often feel like, I can speak for myself, but when I first discovered this cause, it really hit home, and it was very devastating to see what these dogs and cats endure. And I was like trying to figure out, how can I really help? Like, you know, signing petitions, it often feels meaningless. It certainly is not very impactful with a country like China, and that has been said over and over again. So signing a petition is not going to be super impactful. It's not going to make a difference. But, you know, what would you say we can do? What is some of the actions that we can do over here? Apart from, I always mention donations. Obviously, donate to the rescue groups that you feel are doing legitimate good work, and support them, because they're actually doing the hard work that you're not able to do. So, you know, all you know, if we can at least support you financially in those actions. Obviously, you can volunteer, you can adopt, you can foster. But is there anything else that you think, you know, we should be focusing our energy on as foreigners to make a difference overseas in China? I want you to both answer this, so whoever wants to jump in first.
I'll go first. I think educating is a key piece over here in North America.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be our rescue group. It could be another rescue group that does the same thing, but spreading the word, because there's a lot of times that I run into folks who are like, well, why from China? And they have no idea of what's going on.
Yeah.
Keep the education going so more people understand.
Yeah.
The just not China, just in Asia or wherever, just spread the word and give the knowledge out there. This is why we do this.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's key there, because you said you can donate, you can volunteer, you can do this, but if you educate,
then you can enlist new supporters and followers and all that.
Not even that. Just have people have knowledge, because knowledge is power.
Understanding what the issues are, absolutely. Okay. And that's the point of the podcast. Actually, I had a bunch of answers, and I felt like I was not getting the answers I needed on social media. I was looking at the websites of certain nonprofits, but then you only get their viewpoint and the limited information that they are sharing. And I did not understand the torture aspect. And that's a question I often ask my guests, is that, do they really deliberately torture the dogs before slaughter? Or is it just, you know, instances where it happens at the Yulin Dog Meat Festival? Is it a rampant practice to really cause the dog suffering because of these misguided beliefs that the more adrenaline runs through their blood, the better the meat, the better tasting the meat, the more medicinal the meat will be? Is that something that you feel is true, or is it just, you know, it's been over sensationalized, you know, through the media and you know, having those instances at the Yulin Dog Meat Festival where they were brutalized deliberately, and making it so that it's an everyday occurrence? I don't know.
I don't think it's been over sensationalized. No.
No.
I do not.
It's part of the practice. They do believe that the more abuse the dog undergoes, that. I mean, maybe Jill, you could. You have your son.
Yeah. So, yeah.
Because you've been in China, so maybe you've witnessed something that you can.
You know, I've often wondered how a culture could do something so brutal, and I do think, unfortunately, the brutality is horrific. It's probably even more so than any of us can imagine. I don't know. There's probably a historian that could trace back to the generations of why the communists are taking it out on the very vulnerable. I do believe also that there is a part of China right now that just brutalizes animals, you know, not even for food consumption. What I do see is a trend that there is an extreme level of cruelty. An extreme level. We just took in a dog that its back was broken and it was burned and it's in a wheelchair. So I think that education is clearly important. I also think that, you know, I've often said this. I mean, China is a very powerful country, and so is the United States and other countries. But bottom line is, it is an industry that is money driven.
Yeah.
So if we do something financially, my answer to you is, you know, if we do something financially, that's going to put sanctions or some sort of financial pressure on that country. Not so much to shame them. I mean, that doesn't matter to them. They really could care less. But to actually say, this is the sanction. If we have agreed as a nation that we're not going to tolerate this anymore, and these are the sanctions, that you will not bring your freight into our world, you will not do technology in our world, and we are not going to tolerate this anymore, and it is going to hurt you financially because they're an empire.
And that's what's going to make the difference. Because
I believe that.
It all boils down to money. Yeah,
it does.
Yeah.
It's a huge billion and billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
And again, if our world and the nations and all the countries that you're mentioning take a stand and hit them where the finances are going to hurt them as a nation, I do think you're going to see change. But I think, unfortunately, you're not going to see much change. I mean, not much happened with the pandemic.
Right. Absolutely. And I think that's been discussed, on my podcast. I had even Sarah Brownlee, and she started a group called Operation Hound, and she actually put together an executive agreement that was the Anglosphere Executive Agreement, and it would have the U.S. unite with Anglosphere nations, so that's the UK, US, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, and that would together those nations would have enough trade pressure on China.
Right.
But that would be the accelerator for change. Meanwhile, we have to remember that China, it's about 20%, or the numbers fluctuate, but it's still a minority of the population that does consume dogs and cats. And yes, the people involved in the trade are brutal, as we've, they don't have any care in their hearts for the animals. It's just, they're there to make money. But, so change is happening, but, it's either it's going to take a long time, it's going to be a generational switch, or, if we could put together enough pressure on the trade front, then we might see a change happen earlier than later. And, all of us are so disheartened at seeing this cruelty that, of course, we want change to happen overnight, or yesterday would be nice. But we also have to remember that we have to work with the Chinese people. There are many wonderful people. It's a beautiful country to visit. It's culturally rich. I mean, there's so many beautiful, positive things in China, and we have to focus on those things and the good people that want the change that we want. We're
right.
And as I would like to also mention, the podcast was never set out to shame China. It's really shaming the practice of what's going on, and because this is a situation very specific to this trade. Yeah, so we have to remember there are very good people in China, and they want to see the change happen as much as we do, and it's going to happen, and we have to keep the faith and keep supporting the work of the good folks like you. So one last question for you guys, and this will be my final one. I was wondering if you have any guest suggestions for me for the show, because the podcast aims to educate, not just in China, but all over Southeast Asia, where the practice is rife. So it could be a nonprofit, it could be an activist, it could be anyone that you think would add to the conversation and benefit viewers in terms of helping us figure out what are the strategies that we could deploy that would be the most impactful to try to put an end to this.
I have two suggestions. Maybe reaching out to some of the Chinese culture in our country that have a lot of connection in China, and they can really communicate the culture much better than myself. Visiting there is actually one thing, but actually reaching out to someone who's Chinese, and that's oftentimes what we do. When I get stuck, we have adopters here that are Chinese, and I often ask them, how is this being interpreted? So I'll give you an example. We are taking some Labradors that are not coming out of China, but our rescue has decided to do so. And one of the rescuers made a video for us. So the Chinese like to give gifts. I would not have known that if I had not communicated with some of my Chinese citizens here in our country who help us understand the culture better. So I would welcome maybe some folks that are could help educate about the culture and talk to you and the podcast about what it is like in China.
Yeah.
What the meat trade is for a Chinese person, what that means living here or in China.
Yeah. Great. And can I count on you for that citizen, that Chinese citizen?
I have, yes, I have quite a few of them that I also communicate with, and they have family members in China.
Oh,
so
wow.
the nice thing is that, I'll give you another example. We're working with a mom and a daughter. The mom is in Beijing, the daughter is here. We're trying to help her save her animals.
Wow.
She speaks a little bit of English, but is pretty good, and she can really help. She can really, I mean, she would be a wonderful guest because she reached out to us. We're helping her, but the challenges that we're dealing with the animals in Beijing and all the problems that were occurring, I think would be very helpful to educate your podcast
viewers.
Followers.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great suggestion. It's the first time somebody suggests that. And I have Chinese friends here, but they are not involved with animal welfare. So I'm not sure that the conversation would go in the direction I would like it to.
Yeah.
And what about you, Ryan? Do you have any suggestions for me in the show?
I think that was the greatest suggestion, is understanding the culture
Yeah.
and where it comes from and a little history behind it.
Yeah.
So we can educate ourselves.
Absolutely.
And so it's about understanding each other.
Amen to that. I think that's very, very to the point, because, you know, without good communication, without understanding each other and having a discussion, then nothing will come about. You know, no change will come about. And it's not through pointing fingers and bashing and calling names. That's not very productive.
You know, the way I look at it is you're allowed to agree to disagree. As long as you sit down and have a good conversation and you listen to each other.
Absolutely. So before anything else happens with the camera,
yes, exactly.
I thank you for your time. You've been so generous, and I know how busy you are. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I know our viewership is going to love this podcast, and we encourage, I will put the links to your websites, to your social media, and I encourage viewers at home to please support you because you're doing terrific work, and God bless.
Thank you very much. God bless you as well.
Take care.